You're listening to Season 3 of the Fairways People podcast, where we share inspiring stories, meaningful conversations, and the voices behind our charity. Each episode offers a closer look at the people and passion that drive us. Hosted by Fairways Managing Director Gareth Webb.
Hello, welcome to another Fairways People podcast. And today I have Kat Thorne. Hello, Kat, how are you?
Hello, I'm well, Gareth. Thanks for having me on.
No, I appreciate your time. I know you're very busy. You're a keynote speaker, a motivational speaker. You've done TED Talks. You speak around the country, motivate and build people's confidence. So give me a little introduction about what you actually do, Kat, just so our listeners know.
So I help people focus on making one small positive habit change, something that could just be a few minutes a day that supercharges their performance both at work and at home. That's what I do.
You do, yes, absolutely. And I've seen this firsthand, and it's very good. And I'm quite excited because you're at our conference this year, so I won't give too much away. But I'm really excited to put you in front of our sort of 500 staff over 2 days to look at well-being and positive habits and stuff like that. So what I'd like to do with all my guests is just start from the beginning, really. If you don't mind telling me a little bit about your childhood and where you grew up.
Yeah. So I felt like I had a very lovely childhood. I grew up in a very small village in Somerset, just kind of on the outskirts of Glastonbury. And it's only now, I just turned 44 at the weekend. It's only now, I guess, I've reached this age, I've realized how much your childhood really shapes who you are as a person. And there was something that happened when I was 4 years old, which entirely shaped the kind of character I am and is now kind of affecting me in other ways. And that was that we lost my mum when I was 4. So she had an asthma attack and left behind me, my brother, my sister, and obviously my dad to raise us. And I think what happened from a very early age is I just took on this mothering role in my family. It was, I was so young. I only have one memory of my mum, which was that night, which is really sad. And I just remember not even probably being immature enough to even have consciously make that decision. It was just like a default. I just stepped into that role. I was cooking and cleaning from a very, very early age. And I think whilst I still feel like I had a lot of love in my childhood from my dad, like I think my dad did the best he could with what he had. I definitely have found over the last 10 years of my life, when big things happen, in your life, and you want especially as a woman, you want your mum there. I think I've really started to notice that void.
Yeah, absolutely. God, that's awful. So was it just you and Dad for a while, or like as a family, or growing up?
As in, did he meet anyone else?
Yeah.
So it was just me, my dad, my brother and sister until I was 17. So my dad had a couple of girlfriends, but nothing really. And they weren't involved in our life at all. I think my dad was really traumatized, obviously, by what happened. And he just worked a lot and tried to look after us. And I think there was no time for him. And when I was 17, I remember going around to my neighbors and saying my dad's still really sad. And I was about to go off to university, and it was back in the day where we still had newspapers and we had ads for dating. So my neighbors helped me put an ad in the newspaper, and he met this woman that night and they're still together, and I'm 44 now. So.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah, it was like the Lonely Hearts column in the newspapers.
Yeah, exactly. And whilst that relationship has not been easy at all, I think that my dad, by that point in our life, he really needed someone for himself, like someone to talk to, someone to share things with. So, even though it's been very difficult, and I think a lot of people who I'm sure have got blended families and step parents and things will recognize some of this. I think ultimately we had to put our thoughts and our feelings to one side, and for my dad just to kind of feel like himself again.
Absolutely. So did you sort of follow the normal route of education and school and college and university. Talk me through that a little bit. What were you good at, Kat?
Yeah, so I feel like my dad, potentially like subconsciously, I'm sure it was subconscious, drilled into me a very young age. You got to work really hard, and that's the only way you're going to get a really good life. And because my dad didn't have hardly anything growing up, he really struggled. He didn't do very well at school, and like went into the building trade when he was like a young teenager. He didn't want that for us. So he told us, you basically have to go to university. You have to do really well at school, go to university, get a really good job, meet the man of your dreams, buy a house, get married, have babies, and live happily ever after. So I literally grew up with this script, and it was almost like an alarm in my brain would go off if I was close to that script, and I'd be like, oh, check that box. And he said to me, and my sister was actually older, and it was clear that she wasn't going to follow this path. So he said to me, you need to be the one to go to university. You're going to be the first one in our family. And I look back and I think I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't really want to go to university, but I felt like I had to make him happy and to make him proud. And it's one of the things that comes up now in some of my keynotes and my programs, because all of this conditioning isn't always the right thing for us. But I think a lot of people who are listening to this podcast will find themselves in jobs, in relationships, in different scenarios in their life because of potentially a societal script they followed, or because someone has told them that this is what they should be doing. And for me, a few years ago, I kind of ripped up that script and put it on the fire and decided I was going to live my life completely differently, live my life intuitively, live it like outside of the norms. And ever since I've been doing that, I've felt like a completely different person. Like I'm not pleasing someone else anymore.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll come on to that because I want to talk a little about, what happened in 2016. But so what did you do at university then? What was your, what was your subject matter or?
German.
German. I wasn't expecting that. Oh, okay.
So ich kann Deutsch sprechen, but it's completely pointless. Like I could speak German, but for what reason, And actually, I tell a lie. A year and a half ago, I was working with a big international company, and they asked me if I could speak any other languages because they had offices dotted around. And they said, to be honest, the most difficult office is Germany because they speak the kind of least fluently out of all of our locations. And I said, well, funny enough, I can speak German. So I flew to Germany and did 2 keynotes in German. So maybe that was worth thousands and thousands of pounds of debt and years and years and years of living there and learning it to be fluent. I'm not sure if I definitely got my return on investment there, but yeah. So, and this, I think this is part of the problem with the university, and like definitely that situation for me was like, well, why do I need to go to university? Like to study what, and it was like, then I had to just pick what felt like quite a random subject. I also did communications, and look, I did university. So, I've got my degree. I went on and did half a master's. I also did a PGCE. I became a teacher after that for a couple of years. So, I mean, I went down the education road, but if I was to have my time again, or if someone was saying to me now, like, should I go to university? I would definitely be exploring all the other options. I don't think university nowadays is the be all and end all like perhaps it used to be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I wasn't expecting you to say German. I was expecting a business degree, or because I know how successful you've been.
No, I didn't know anything about business.
So you spoke a little bit about teaching what in a school, college, or what?
At a college, at Highbury College here in Portsmouth. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So what brought you to Portsmouth University? No.
Yes, it was actually. So the first time was the university. The second time was Life Explosion. So I decided that I didn't want to teach kids. I wanted to teach kind of young adults. and adults. And there were only 2 places in the country that did this PGCE, Newcastle and Portsmouth. And I thought, well, Portsmouth's got the sea and it's a bit closer and I'll go there. So I did my PGCE. I got a job at Highbury where I'd done my work experience. And then I lived here for a few years before I moved back to Somerset when my sister had her first child.
Cool. Okay. And what's some of the other careers you've had before we get to sort of why you do what you do now? So weren't you in the corporate world for a bit as well, weren't you?
Yes. Yeah. So I was a teacher and I was teaching really difficult groups of learners. So I had kids who had been kicked out of school, who were doing English and maths, trying to retrain in a vocation. And I also taught English to asylum seekers and refugees. So as a new teacher, I'm pretty sure they timetabled me the toughest classes. Yeah, literally, like I felt like I thought a PGCE was going to prepare me for being a teacher. And oh God, my learning started on that very first lesson. So I was trying to teach these wildly different learners and I just felt like I was failing for months. And then this is 20 years ago. So technology and apps weren't like they are now, but we were using technology on a very surface level. And I was using different apps and different tools and things. And I could see the difference in the young people. And even some of my lessons, I would use Facebook to communicate with them. And I thought, this is really like getting good feedback. Like they're getting engaged. I'm getting good results. And then I saw a job come up after about 2 years of doing that. And it was basically teaching teachers how to use technology for a software company. And I'm not going to lie, like the route in teaching was going to be very slow. And I felt like financially, but also from a career point of view, I felt like I was in a bit of a cage. I felt like I couldn't go anywhere. And I thought, I'm going to die here, so I need to get out of here. And I applied for that job. And this is where self-limiting beliefs and other people's beliefs are so important to notice. So I asked this teacher for advice. I showed her the job description. It was like double the salary. It was working for a software company in Norway, traveling around the world. Like it sounded like the dream job. And she said, you won't get it. And I nearly didn't apply for it because she said you won't get it. And I thought, what would my dad say? He'd say, just go for it. And so I did, and I got it. And then I worked in corporate for 7 years. And I had the most amazing career. Like, I don't regret that phase of my life whatsoever. I traveled all around the world. Like, I went to the most random places. I went to Mexico for work. I worked in Boston. I went to Georgia, like former Russia, Georgia. I had the most phenomenal career. I kept getting promoted. You can see where this is going now as leading you on to my life explosion here. But, and in this period, I'd also met my ex-partner who I got married to, and we were buying a house, and like I was ticking all those check boxes, like perfectly, effortlessly. They were all happening. And I even remember the night that I met him. He was such a lovely person. And I just thought, this is it. He ticks all the boxes. We're going to get married. I mean, never mind if he actually wanted to or not. It was already decided in my brain. Poor guy. So after 7 years of running around the world like a maniac without any good habits, I was absolute an animal. I used to wake up, snooze my alarm, check my phone within a second of opening my eyes. I'd be replying to emails, straight away into the caffeine. And I was just constantly like, my body was in high alert. Like feel like I was having a heart attack, just heart racing. And there were loads and loads of other habits that were really unhealthy. And I think one of the habits I grew up with was, drinking alcohol is a way of de-stressing. And that's all I knew. And everyone did it. So it was so normal. In fact, if you ever didn't drink, people would just think you were pregnant. So that was, pressure. Yeah. And so in 2016, I remember I was on this work trip in Norway and everything was great. And I got back, and 3 days after I got back, I literally woke up one morning and I couldn't feel anything at all, like no feeling in my body whatsoever. And still, it wasn't really enough to make me worry. I mean, I was just like, this is a bit strange. Went to the doctor and he said, I'm surprised you haven't already had a heart attack. Like, your body is completely shut down. And that's when, you know, everything unraveled as the pack of cards, the house of cards came down and everything fell apart. Like my relationship, I lost my home as part of this. I actually quit my career and quit my job because I was actually really ashamed and embarrassed about what I had done and the state that I'd got myself in. And I think probably a lot to do with my childhood as well as like societal conditioning was just like, well, just keep going. Like there's no opportunity to say I'm struggling. Like you have to just keep showing up every day. And I think this was on my podcast, I had somebody who said once, it was like my body sent me an email and I just didn't read it. And I felt like that it was the same for me. Like I was getting all of these signs and I was just ignoring them. And I feel like my body had to send me one holy moly big sign for me to actually wake up and listen to it. And it literally broke me. And it took me a really long time to recover. I mean, I literally left everything and moved back to Portsmouth. And I think that's probably the first intuitive decision I'd ever made at that point because it didn't make any sense. Like I didn't know anyone then in Portsmouth. I had 2 friends who had got kids by that point. So I had no roots. I had no job, like nothing. But I felt like the sea was calling. And it's kind of ironic now, 10 years later, how much the sea is such a big part of my life. But at the time, I'd never really gone in the sea. So it was... You know, and all these things that I talk about now that are so important for me, all these habits, all of those things I just used to think they belonged up a mountain.
So that's really interesting. So what do you think was the tipping point? Because you said you had a lot of signs and you had everything. And then it's like, what was the tipping point to make you go, boom, this is it, enough's enough? Because that's quite strong because you're very strong, you're confident, you're very resilient. But yeah, what was the turning point for you?
I think it was my wedding. Right. I think it was getting married to someone that I knew I shouldn't get married to, but not being able to not go through with it. And it's really weird. Like I don't really talk about this very often, but I think it's obviously on a podcast you get a chance to be a bit more vulnerable and have a bit more of a conversation about it. But it's taken me a really long time to talk about it because I think there was a lot of shame and a lot of guilt after this because it's awful to marry somebody that you don't think you should be marrying, but it didn't feel like I was fully conscious. I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience, like I was watching myself from a distance get married to somebody. And there were all these people there, all the people that I loved, like my dad and my family and my friends. And everyone was like, this is the most beautiful day. These 2 people like coming together after we were together for like 8 years. And this was all I ever wanted. All I ever wanted was to be married and to have a family and to have a home and to have a successful career. And I was literally just checking all these boxes without really it being the right thing for me. And I think it wasn't long. It was kind of all around this time. I think sometimes they say like big life moments like death or birth, or they're the things that really trigger you into kind of having these awakenings or life explosions or however you want to call it. And I think there were a lot of things that happened in a really short space of time. And I think my body just couldn't handle it anymore. And it was just like, you need to do something now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I guess you stepped away, come to Portsmouth, and then you sort of, I guess, you've had this complete shift, like you say, in terms of what you do now. So I guess what's made you become this motivational speaker and do the work you do now?
Well, so after this happened, I moved to Portsmouth and I got headhunted. So the next big job on my vision board and my dream was to become a CEO. So I got headhunted to become a CEO and I thought, wow, this is it. Like I've officially made it. But actually I didn't want it then because I'd lost everything in my life. So I was like, well, you know, I've got to keep going in one area of my life. Like I remember going to a therapist after all this happened and he said to me, you know, when you've got kind of three main balls in your life when you're juggling them all, but when you drop one of them, like your career or something, your whole life feels really unstable. If you drop two of them, like your relationship, you can feel really, really wobbly. And if you drop all three, which is you and yourself and your health and everything, then you're really quite screwed. And I felt like a new job, a new career, a new start, a new city, like let's go for it. So I did that. I did that for about 4 years. And I really enjoyed it. I really loved it. It was a great career. It was actually working for a Commonwealth organisation, and it was kind of half of it was charity and half of it was commercial. So it like kind of ticked a lot of boxes. And I got to work in a lot of places like Zambia, where I maybe wouldn't have had the opportunity to work. And I was working on a project delivering low tech teaching materials and teacher training for teachers. So it was like really rewarding. But after quite a few years, I felt like something was missing. And for ages, I thought it was a child. I thought because I hadn't had children at this point, I thought it was children that was missing. And I used to feel like I felt this in my career a lot, that my job was always stealing my life. And it was really hard feeling because I loved my career and I was always really career driven. It wasn't that I ever did jobs that I didn't really enjoy. And even if I did, I always made the best of it and thought, well, this is just to get me to the next chapter. But it was very hard to have this feeling of like, there's never any time for me. And I don't really know what I want from life. My whole ego was attached to my job title. And so people used to say to me, wow, Kat, you're like global commercial director for this international software company. And, oh, wow, you're like the CEO of this Commonwealth education, blah, blah, blah. And I was very ego driven. And then I was just sitting with this empty feeling. And by this point, I bought my own house. I was in a new relationship. And I was convinced it was a baby. And I took out a notebook and I started every morning. I just used to write down what was in my brain because I couldn't really make sense of it. And I was fully expecting it to say like, oh yeah, it's because you haven't had a baby yet because you haven't become a mother. And it wasn't. It was like, what is now the morning game changer? What is now like positive habits? It was that. It was like this overwhelming desire to share my journey and share what I had learned and teach other people how to build like serious resilience, but also how to get yourself from a bad place or maintain if you're in a good place and everything in between. And the more I started to think about it, the more I was attracting these opportunities. And this is how you can tell I didn't do business at uni, because I did quit my CEO job, which was very lovely. And I started my business and I made 500 quid in the first year. I nearly lost my house. I used all my savings and got in a right old mess because I had the wrong approach to how I was going to deliver this positive habits. I thought I would be like a coach, a one-to-one coach, and it just didn't work. And actually the 500 quid I made was only my schoolmate who worked for Facebook and was loaded, and he sort of bunked me 500 quid because he felt sorry for me. And then it was funny because I was looking for jobs all the time, every day. I was looking for jobs on LinkedIn and I couldn't find anything that was the right thing for me. And so I just started posting about positive habits, just started posting positive things. And my old boss from Norway called me up and he was like, oh, I like your positivity stuff on LinkedIn. Will you come and do a talk to 100 people at this conference we used to do together in London? And I said to him, are you going to pay me? Because it sounds like you want me to do it for free. By this point, by the way, I was not a speaker. I had no plan. I had no speech or anything. And I think this was about 2 weeks beforehand. And I said, are you going to pay me? He goes, yeah, I'll give you 500 quid. And I was like, boom, I'm there. And that was it. That morning Game Changer was born. And I delivered this talk and they loved it and I loved it. And I thought, this is it. I've got to work with teams. It's groups of people. I've got to deliver it using all my teaching skills, like high energy, high impact, incorporate tech. I don't know many speakers that do live audience interaction as part of their talks, but I do. And it makes me nervous every single time because, and you'll see this at your conference, you can write whatever you like on my screen and I got no idea, no control, no idea. In fact, I got a funny story about the first time that happened. But yeah, so that's, and as I say, the rest is history. I'm now an international speaker. I'm speaking at a really exciting conference in Slovenia in a couple of weeks' time. Then I'm off to Bulgaria. And I'm talking about an American opportunity at the moment. It'll be my first time in the US. So
wow. Oh,
watch this
brilliant.
space.
Yeah. Good luck. And I know sort of you did a free event last year just to sort of showcase locally some of the stuff you do, and that was brilliant, and I guess that's where I really see sort of what you offer and how you sort of motivate and talk and the morning Game Changer. So I'm really excited about sort of sharing that with our staff towards the end of the year. So exciting. Okay, so what would you say then? What's your biggest, because you've done so much really in your lifetime. But what would you say is one of your biggest achievements? That's quite a big question, I guess.
Oh, it is a big question. Because people always say they're kids, and I haven't had kids. But I think my biggest achievement is breaking through my own fears and the result of breaking through fears. So I'm now, and it is quite hard to accept. It's still a process, but it is clear that I am, through my words and through my own actions and through me breaking through my fears, it's enabling other people to also break through their fears and to unlock their potential. And we were talking just before we started recording this about my sea dipping group, Women Who Plunge. And it was so sweet. It was my birthday at the weekend, and one of them wrote a poem. And honestly, the words that she said in it just really touched my heart in a way that I don't think anyone ever has before. And she said, "You've saved me and many others." And it was a brave action that morning that actually, even before I took that brave action, Stu, who founded Men Who Plunge, he was the one who took that brave step to stand on the beach that morning 3 weeks before me and say, do you know what, as a man, I'm going to go to the beach at 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning, and I'm going to invite other men to come and just be, and no judgment, and just let's do a hard thing together. Let's all get in the sea together. And then when he came back and said to me, I think you need to start a women's group, I rejected the idea straight away, because I just thought, why? I've got enough going on. I don't know anyone in this part of the city. And I was like, I dipped in and out of the sea, but I wasn't consistent with it. And I just thought, no. And then I thought about it and I thought, well, let's just see what happens. And I was actually quite scared that morning that no one was going to turn up, and 3 women turned up, and I was absolutely elated. And some weeks we have 80 women showing up for themselves, and this is in 9 months. We have grown this community.
Absolutely amazing, yeah. And I know we've spoken about it, but like you say, you've got such a range of women that come down, that some even not been out the house, or they've come out of a bad relationship, but it's given them a purpose and a community. And I think I bet you didn't think it was going to be so popular,
No. In fact, one of the sea dipping communities nearby that's been going for years, when we launched the plunge truck, which I'm sure we'll get onto, which is our mobile ice bath and sauna truck, when we launched that, she came along to it and she said, I've just got to ask you, how did you do it? Because she said, I've been running this sea dipping group for years and we've never achieved anything like you've achieved. And honestly, Gareth, I don't have the answer. I didn't have the answer then. I don't have the answer now. I think there are a few things that we do in those communities, like greet people with a hug. make it available to everyone without any judgment. I don't know. I don't know what it is, because I feel like we attract, every single week, we attract new people who just want to be part of something really beautiful. And everybody are these most amazing human beings. And I have so much respect and so much kind of inspiration from them. Like, it's really hard if you're a single mum and you've got 3 children to navigate, like getting up on a Sunday and getting yourself to the beach when you'd much rather be doing 100 other things.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think one of the key parts is you, Kat, and you probably don't realise, because you're so friendly, you're so welcoming, you're so inclusive, and you're so honest. And I think people just warm to you. I've seen it with my own eyes when we've been to other sea dips and that. So I think that's a big key of why people turn up, because they know that you're consistent and you're reliable. So that's just something I've noticed anyway, of why I think it's probably so popular. The other thing you spoke about that you just touched on is you've got this plunge truck, the plunge bus truck with a sauna and the ice cold baths, and you brought it down to Lakeside, our work area, last Friday, and it was fantastic, and the weather was beautiful. But talk to us a little bit about the plunge bus.
Well, yeah, I mean, you probably need to get Mr. Stu Benfield onto your podcast and ask him all about this, because this was his crazy idea. But I think it became apparent after sort of starting to see these communities grow, and like both of us, even before we met, we both were sea dipping with different groups, and I think we had both seen the power of the contrast of cold plunging and sauna. And it was his dream to open a shop so he could, educate people and guide people in cold and heat. Because one of the things that I find so incredibly interesting, but dare I say frustrating sometimes, is, and I used to be this person, which is why I love a challenge now, is people who say, oh, I don't like the cold. Oh, I would never go in the sea. Like, I don't want to be cold. Oh, I love a warm, hot shower. And I'm like, yes, but this is not where the growth is it? So I think he was so passionate about bringing that to other people because he had got so much from it. And then we had a meeting with a really amazing business guy in our network. And he said, could it be mobile? And literally, I think that night, we both Googled like all these different buses, lorries, like everything. And the plunge truck was born, and him and his friends converted it in like less than a month. So we're having an event at Lakeside on Friday, the 19th of June. And I think what's really important about that event is that we want to showcase to leaders and anyone who's involved with teams that this is an alternative kind of experience for teams. And not everyone has to get in the cold and the heat. Like, you can just come, we can come to your workplace, we can give the education on it, and then they can use it another time or use another facility. And if people want to try it, and we even saw this at your event, Gareth, like we saw you get in, and some of your colleagues, and lots of colleagues that didn't want to for a number of reasons, but most of that is probably just fear of the unknown.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so how can you grow? How can you put yourself in an uncomfortable situation if someone isn't there to support you and guide you? And that's why, for me, I work with organizations and teams now when it comes to habit building, because it's really hard to do on your own. That's why we have growing communities of sea dippers, because let's face it, who wants to go to the beach on a rainy January on their own? Like, one of the lovely things about it is because we're doing it a hard thing together, and then that gives you a massive dopamine hit and all the other benefits. So I think the plunge truck has got a great future, very exciting future with teams and with companies. But I can understand someone saying, oh, that's not for us. And that's why we need to bring it to people. We need to share the stories. We need to talk about it. We need to get people having a look round. And if they want to get in, they can get in.
100%. I think it's such a great idea, and experienced it firsthand last week. I thought it's fantastic. And I think what a great idea but also it's so different. You know, a lot of team building days, they do the same thing, you know, with corporate stuff, but bringing something like this along, not only the health benefits, the mental health benefits, but just that something different, the challenge, the excitement. But you guys are so good at coaching you through your breathing and getting you in there. And like I said, you're so kind and helpful and supportive. You make the experience like even better, you know, especially with the sauna and, you know, with the smells and all the other little stuff you do. It's really, so I'd highly recommend it. And if there are companies that would like to book it out, where do they, is there a website or how do they go about it?
Yeah, so they can come to our website, which is just www.plunge.co.uk without the U, so it's PLNGE. They can check out our Instagram, which is plunge_UK, and obviously we are also on LinkedIn and Facebook. But yeah, I think, but if you're local to Portsmouth and you're free on Friday 19th of June, come to Village Hotel at 10 a.m. You can register. We've got an Eventbrite set up. And just come and meet us. And we're going to be sharing. We've actually got somebody who's already booked it for their team. She's going to be talking about it. We're going to be sharing some of the impact that's come from the people who've been using it. And you're right, it's different, but also it's really powerful because nobody, you know, I think the old way of doing kind of team building and well-being is kind of gone. And actually, I think if we can show people a different way of helping themselves that has a direct impact on the business, but also on their families, on themselves. And just by bringing the truck into your company once, this could change like your company, their lives, their families' lives. Like it could have such a big ripple effect. And every time I go to a sauna, I meet new people, you have lovely conversations. Nobody has any inhibitions. And actually we have, as you said, we have people all different kind of ages, backgrounds, shapes, sizes. And once you kind of get over that, you realize you're just doing a good thing for yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
It is, you know, it's life-changing.
Yeah, no, 100%. No, definitely highly recommend it. Okay, so I've got two more questions I would just want to ask you, Kat. I always say this, and I have to continue, and I'll keep saying this as well. So, if you used to stick a rock, you used to get the funfair, you break it in half, and you got the words running down the central. What's your values in your course? What if I'm not going to obviously snap you in half, Kat, but if you were to break you in half, what's the core values that run through you? You know.
I think for me, what's really the most important thing for me is that I do what I say I'm going to do. And that first and foremost is to myself, but then to other people. So going back to our community, that wouldn't work if I wasn't consistent, because if half the time I didn't show up and there wasn't a flag and there wasn't someone warm to greet those people, we wouldn't have a thriving community. Because to build, I think, a really healthy life, you need to be consistent. For me now, prioritizing myself is my number one, I guess, rule that I live by, because if I prioritize myself, I'm going to be better for my clients, I'm going to be better for my family, for my friends, and everything around me. Everything is better when you invest in yourself. I think it's important, although this is difficult, to try not to judge people, I'm a big empath. I think everyone's got a reason for why they do something. You know, people who are in prison aren't in prison for no reason, you know, and you know this better than anyone working in the work that you do, that there's a reason why people do the things they do. And even there's a reason why someone cut you up on the motorway this morning. So if we take a step back and rather than react with anger or those kind of emotions, and we go, actually, you know, what's that person going through? Or also the other thing that I love to live by, I used to live by what's the worst that could happen, and that's how you get to push yourself forward. But I've got an even better one, which is what's the best that could happen. And if you imagine any scenario, rather than looking at the worst case scenario, look at what's the best that could happen. And I think my final one is just, you get one life, you know, losing my mum at 4, nearly losing my life at 34. Like, just if you want to write a book, if you want to go abroad, if you want to change your job, if you want to get out of some crappy relationship that you're in, if you want to go and live on a boat, like travel the world, whatever it is you want to do, start working towards it. Like, stop making excuses and saying you don't have time or it's not possible. Like, I truly believe you can build a life that you love if you really want to. And it starts with believing that it's possible.
Definitely. What's the best that can happen? Definitely. I love that.
Yeah, it's so good, isn't it?
And that's why I'm excited to get you at our conference so we can speak to staff about that, the morning game changer. So last question.
Yeah.
What do you, obviously we have touched on it quite a bit, and I know, certainly sort of sea dipping and stuff you enjoy doing, but what do you do for your own mental health, your own well-being?
Oh, I do loads of things, and I'm always thinking, like, trying to improve that. But for me, exercise now is a fundamental daily exercise. And it's something I'm going to talk about at the conference, how exercise doesn't have to be going to the gym. And actually getting into the gym, lifting weights is quite a new thing for me. But it could be anything, walking, running, even dancing, like anything that gets you moving. Cold showers, they're brutal, but they turn you into a wild animal. So the more wild animal energy you've got, the better. Not checking my phone first thing in the morning. I haven't done that for years, and I feel like a new person. I think it's got to be one of the most toxic ways to start your day, but yet 99% of the population do this. And I know why, and I used to be that person. I think sleep, good food, just the more 101 of being a human being, the better. Yeah. And I think, if we're really honest with ourselves, and this is what I will do at your conference, this is what I do with my teams. I do a day in the life exercise. If you get people to think about a typical day in the life of themselves, we can all think of at least one thing. Maybe you can share one, Gareth, one thing that you're doing that's somehow negatively affecting you. What's one thing you do?
Well, I've got back into a habit actually of going on my phone again. I sort of stopped that in the morning, and then I've gone back to that. So I think actually you've just reiterated and reinforced the reasons why we shouldn't. So you've just triggered a positive habit to start again. So
yeah, I'm so glad, because it's easily done. I was just chatting to someone in the office about it, and he was saying, like, I don't have my phone in my room when I'm at home, but as soon as I'm traveling, it's back next to me, and then it slips back in when you get home. And this is the other thing with habits is, like, let's not beat ourselves up about it. Like, this is life. Life is an absolute roller coaster, good and bad and ugly, but the most important thing is you keep reminding yourself, like, you're building a life. So one of the reasons I don't really like the idea of diets and all these things, or we should get thin so we can look good in our wedding dress, or for our 50th birthday, or whatever it is. Like, for me, habits are about building a healthy, long, sustainable life. So sometimes you're going to drop them, then you need to pick them up again. And then you might go off on this tangent and that tangent, and that's okay. For me, what's most important is, are you aware? Because once you raise your awareness, you can actually get control of these habits. Most people are sleepwalking through life, and I was for years, not even realizing the power of our habits.
Definitely, absolutely. So if people want to get hold of you to do some events, talking, motivational speaking, businesses and stuff, where do they go and find you, Kat?
Oh, they can get in the queue. No, I'm joking. They can LinkedIn. Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. I absolutely love what I do, and I'm so grateful that I get to do this in all industries all around the world. I think it's relevant for everyone, especially I think leadership teams. So yeah, LinkedIn, and I'm also on Instagram as well.
Brilliant. And thank you so much for today, because I know how busy you are. So thank you for your time, and we'll catch up soon.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Kat.
Yeah, thank you.